Just want to make a quick video. Breaking news: Anthony Joshua is going to be fighting Andy Ruiz in Saudi Arabia on December the 7th. Sky box office. Just trying to find out here where it's going to be in Saudi. I think it's going to be in Jeddah, which is where the Amir Khan fight was, and it's also where the Super Series was, where George Groves lost to Callum Smith in the super middleweight final. So what's happened there, people? Surprise location, but effectively Andy Ruiz just was not going to be coming to the UK, and I think because of that, Hearn dug his heels in and said it's going to be on neutral territory, so not the US. Now, I just don't know if this is a good move, especially I'm thinking from a DAZN point of view here. DAZN put up the big bucks the last time. Time difference between Saudi Arabia and the US, I believe, is going to be a bigger time difference than the UK. I believe Saudi may be kind of 3 hours ahead of the UK. I need to double check that, but not prime time for US audiences. So if they are putting up any of the purse, that doesn't bode well for their app. So that's their perspective. So on the Sky Sports one, doesn't make much of a difference, I suppose, in terms of viewing time. So they can adjust that so that it is prime time for the UK. Where does this leave Joshua and Ruiz? I don't particularly think it favours one or the other. You could say from a heat perspective, temperature-wise, maybe slightly Andy Ruiz, having boxed off the West Coast and training out of the West Coast of the US. The temperatures are higher than London, but then in the off seasons, or not off season, between fights, you see Joshua regularly goes out to Dubai, so getting acclimatized, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue for either camp. And it truly is neutral ground, so it's going to come down to how they both perform. We've seen a lot of videos where Anthony Joshua now is practicing head movement. He's come out and said he wants to do that as well. George Foreman reached out to him to say he'll train him, and he did AJ did an interview this week with Sky Sports saying he still needs to reach out to George Foreman to to take on some of that advice. It's a bit strange why. I mean, the fight's still a few months out, but why he hasn't at least made contact with him. It could be, when we're getting close to camp, we'll do something, and arrange, where we're going to meet up, whether he's going to fly over or whether AJ is going to go over to the US. But just all a bit kind of strange. Anyway, my prediction for the fight, given where we stand right now, is that it's going to be a repeat performance. I might go a few more rounds because I see Joshua being much more cautious. But over, I would say probably the 5th, 6th round is when I see Andy Ruiz closing that distance and starting to land some of those shots. I don't particularly see Ruiz going down this time. I think it was a lack of concentration where he was in the pocket and he just stood still, and AJ got off a crisp uppercut and left hook, which put him down, which put Ruiz down. I can't really see him doing that again. I think Ruiz, you saw how switched on Ruiz was after that. I see him doing the same thing, but from round one this time, stalking Joshua. Joshua's going to be on his jab. I think he's going to put up a better performance for the first four rounds ish, as in being very regiment on the game plan that McCracken's going to put out for him. But once the shit hits the fan, and effectively Ruiz does break down, close down that distance, one camp is not enough to make major changes like Joshua needs to do. He really needs to go back to basics, and I think the consensus was advice in the boxing community has been, take a warm up fight, iron some of those kinks out, get back used to the feel of performing. I saw an interview today with someone called Heavy D, O'Hara Davis, and Dean White. And O'Hara spoke about coming back from his first loss to Josh Taylor, and didn't come back against a great opponent, but he says he was basically breaking it, even walking, for the ring walk. Once he got in the ring, he put the opponent down, wished he stayed down, was praying he stayed down. Opponent got up, put him down again, and eventually won the fight. But it's getting that out of your system, and that's nothing to do with all the technical flaws that Joshua has to address. This is just overcoming your demons in terms of a defeat. So getting back in that ring, jumping back into it, you have to give Joshua full props, in the sense of clearly he's got the balls to go back in there and reclaim what he thinks is his. But having balls, having heart, all the rest of it doesn't necessarily mean that leads to the best decisions. And this is definitely a time and place where he should have been thinking with his mind. It still remains to be seen. Let's see what develops over the next few months. Let's see how he progresses. Let's see if he's making the right noises, if he's surrounded by the right people, if he gets in the hard sparring that is gonna, that's gonna pressurize him. I mean, an ideal sparring partner for the whole duration of this camp would be Oscar Rivas. I personally see Oscar Rivas in some respects being a better version of Andy Ruiz. If Oscar Rivas and Joshua fought, I would be picking Oscar Rivas. From a height, from a stature standpoint, he's similar to Andy Ruiz. He's got fast hands. He lets his hands go up close. So I would have, if I was McCracken, I would have Oscar Rivas in for the full camp, and I would have a lot of technical spars. And this is you've already closed the distance, so you're already in the pocket, and working on different techniques of holding. So what is the danger hand, what is the major shot that you want to be tying the guy up. What you noticed is that to break the distance, there would be one lunging in shot that Ruiz would normally throw, and then once he's in, he would be offloading hooks, mainly hooks. There was an instance when Joshua was just on the ropes. I think this is just after the first knockdown, just so leading to the second knockdown. He was on the ropes and just had his hands up, and wasn't too great because he couldn't even see where the punches were coming from. It was almost kind of covering his own eyes. And Ruiz kind of got through with a straight right hand. Other than that, the majority of the shots that Ruiz was throwing was kind of looping shots, were hook shots. And Oscar Rivas would be ideal for that. So I'd have many spars where they'll be up close, and not only kind of the tying up piece, but also once you're in that position, how do you want to position your body so that you're shielded away from Andy's power punches, and where you can kind of let off some of your own. or even if you don't let off any of your own. It's not a macho fight. This one, this is getting yourself back to the right level in the game and competing at the elite level. So you know, even if even if AJ needs to make this boring, so when they're up close, he ties Ruiz up, and then the ref breaks, and then he gets back on his jab. If he does that, I can see the judge is giving him a points victory, even though in that situation I can see kind of Ruiz being the aggressor. But Joshua, as it stands right now, does not have the skill set to keep someone off him when he's up close. It's just a fight. He sees it as a firefight. That's the only way he knows how to fight up close. He's not very kind of skilled in that department. So yeah, so that's my thoughts. Saudi Arabia's confirmed. I've heard talk online about, well, was the contract airtight? Did Hearn or their legal team mess up? I don't think it's any of that. I think they're kind of shrewd individuals. They've been around for a while. They've got the best kind of, not the best, they can afford decent lawyers. And sometimes what people don't realize is, yeah, you don't 100% have to abide by contracts. And what I mean by that is, it's almost like a poker game. You can bluff. So Ruiz can say, I'm not going to fight in the UK. Hearn could have really dug his heels in, and AJ, and said, well, okay, we're taking you to court. Who wants to deal with going to court? The best thing to do is a compromise in that situation. Going to court is a long, drawn-out process. There's various steps you need to follow. You can have appeals after that, and then it's not kind of black. The contract's black and white, but then and you could cite, for example, the Dillian White drug tests recently, and Oscar Rivas not being informed and saying, I'm fearful of my life if I go there because of certain incidents. I mean, that's just a recent one. He could cite many other things as to why he doesn't want to do it, and then it would come down to the judge saying, is this, and this is after the long drawn out process of the whole case, listening to the evidence once it's presented, and it comes down to, it comes down to an element of, is there any precedent for this? So has this thing happened before? What was the reasoning behind that? Can the judge cite those particular cases? Can the defense do the same? And it can become a long drawn out mess, and all throughout that time no one's making any money. DAZN's not making money, AJ's not making money, Hearn's not making money. So that's an approach that Andy could have taken. So the best thing to do is to reach some sort of compromise, and they've reached that compromise by going to a completely neutral location. The fact that it's in Jeddah, I've had some experience dealing with certain companies out there. I do know that there's a lot of development happening in Jeddah. There's an area called KAUST, King Abdullah University, and just about kind of 40 kilometers south of Jeddah, I think it is. That's a major development. There's money being pumped in there. There's also Project Neom going on, which is on the northwest part of Saudi Arabia, where they're taking areas of a little bit of land within Saudi, a little bit of land within Jordan, and I believe Egypt, around the islands of Sanafir and Tehran, I think it is. No, Tehran. Tehran's the capital of Iran. It is Tehran. It's Tiran rather than Tehran. Anyway, those two islands. So around that area, and there's a load of money being pumped there. Where I think they're looking to do a similar kind of free trade zone as you've got in an area of Dubai. They're looking to pump a lot of money in there. So, in that perspective, from that perspective, there could be a serious amount of money on the line, um, which is which probably keeps all parties happy, and means the zone doesn't need to kind of front up as much as they would have done if it was in the US. So that might be some smart business that they're doing there. It might be some smart business. Anyway, those are my thoughts. As it stands right now, I see Ruiz as the strong favourite. I would give him if you're talking about kind of percentages, I would say 75%, 25%, and that 25% for AJ is mainly based on his power. I can't really see Ruiz being stopped personally, but a barrage of punches with the right ref potentially kind of gets him there. I just think when it's up close and personal, Joshua does not have the ring IQ. I think one thing I will add is that, and this might come across as an unusual comparison, but in some ways I see similarities between Joshua and Amir Khan, and I'm not referring to Amir's wife here. And the similarities around, they're not adaptive, reactive type fighters. That's the term kind of Dwyer uses quite a lot. It's almost as soon as he's hurt, similar to Amir Khan, it goes to instinct, and it's kill or be killed type mentality. And I don't think it's at the same level as Amir Khan. I don't think Amir is ever going to change. Clearly he's at the end of his career. As technically brilliant as he could be, like when he fought Zab Judah and Devon Alexander, you've got the flip side of that, where he's punching bits out of Danny Garcia, gets clipped with a looping shot, just got timed. And what did he do? Didn't clear his head, just tried to go mano a mano. And you kind of saw that with Joshua. That's I think that's his kind of mindset to a certain degree. Yes, he did, and that's why I say to a certain degree, because he did try to get behind a jab, but as soon as it gets heated, the technique and everything kind of goes out the window. Whereas you compare it, unfair comparison, but you compare it to like a Floyd Mayweather, he's working you out in the ring there and then. So the adjustments, for example, that he made against Shane Mosley, when Shane Mosley caught him with that right hand, locked up his arm, adjusted his feet, adjusted his timing slightly, and schooled Mosley from that point on. Very harsh example. He's one of the, definitely go down as an all-time great, but the purpose of the example was to say there's different types of boxers, those that can think on their feet and those that like to stick to a game plan. And you would have seen between rounds where Joshua was constantly asking McCracken, what shot did I get caught with? What is he going to do now? What should I do now? What punch should I throw? All of these kind of things. Once you're in there, the coach is really there to fine tune and show you things that advise you on things that you may have missed. But for it to be as basic as what is he gonna do and what punch should I throw, I mean, that's, I don't want to say kind of too much, because the guy's achieved a lot in a short space of time, but it was almost kind of amateurish type comments, and that could be because there was some issue with him before the fight and he wasn't quite right. I'm not buying crazily into that. Lots of fighters go into fights injured, Carl Froch, for example, famously went into the first Kessler fight with an eardrum kind of problem, which I know affects your balance hugely. But once you're in there, whatever's happened before, it's almost a case of you put it aside and you get on with the task at hand. And then for you to be asking questions like this in the heat of battle, for me, that talks to Joshua not handling pressure situations that well, um, and kind of looking to others for guidance. Yes, if it was a tweak here or there, fine, but basic questions, almost kind of help me out here. Even when he got knocked down, I think for the third time, started looking outside the ring. I mean, at that point, what exactly are you expecting the corner or anyone else to be doing around you? Anyway, those are the strong reasons why I've got Andy Ruiz as a 75% ish favorite. As we progress to nearer the fight and as things develop, as we find out who's in his camp, who are the sparring partners, for example, if they don't go for someone like an Oscar Rivas, and kind of if he doesn't get difficult sparring, then I think that percentage even goes higher for Andy Ruiz in terms of going into the fight. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.